teacher?
Henley says his most important lesson is to think for himself, regardless what the government says.
My whole idea is remember what happened here and keep your mind alert.
Later this month, leaders of two countries that once fought each other in a devastating war are scheduled to visit Hawaii. Henley said it's only natural that together they pray for the soul of the victims. Masataka Ko's NHK World, Hawaii.
What's the story of Japan? There are particular features, less pronounced structure, and a wide shape. That's especially suited to projection technology. It's easy to add shadows to create depth. That lets me make more dramatic changes.
Since the release of Omote, a size face mapping has won widespread attention. One collaboration with an IT firm was inspired by the concept of coexistence. Naturalistic colors slowly combine with each other in exquisite harmony. This music video, based around the theme of death, showed the changing texture of aging skin. And his latest work uses motifs from the natural world. The title refers to the beauty and elegance of nature. In the hands of Nobumichi Asai, the face is a medium with limitless potential.
Such amazing work.
Really incredible.
But as well as the technology itself, you also seem to be pursuing your own artistic goals.
The face is almost like the canvas for a story. It's really exciting to think what might happen next.
How are these face mapping pieces created? Can you describe the process?
I use computer graphics to create the shape of a mask, then place the mask onto the model. That's the basic idea. I can show you a bit more. First, we do a 3D scan of the model's face, creating a likeness made up of dots. We process that information to create our digital images. The actual facial textures are taken from photographs. By combining images taken from 3 different angles, we get a result like this. Pasting this over the top of the earlier 3D model gives us all we need for the projection mapping.
The detail is extraordinary. It's like a new layer of skin over the face.
Yes, the original model's face seems to change.
How does the technology enable the footage to adapt to facial movements?
We add markers to the model's face, the black dots.
That's amazing.
If the model moves too quickly, there can be a lag that makes the tracking more noticeable.
I see, yes.
But eventually the technology will let you adapt to any speed, right?
We're developing such technology right now. I'm hoping to project onto a high-speed dance performance.
Interesting.
Very cool.
Earlier, you described the face as a medium. Just a tiny change of expression can reveal a person's thoughts and emotions. It must be very hard to convey those subtleties.
The face is certainly very delicate. With over-design, it can quickly become grotesque.
Too over the top?
If you wear too much makeup, it looks like a mask.
Wow.
There's constant movement of the eyes. I had to add that movement. Layers like that are what make the final effect look realistic and natural. To be honest, it helped me realize just how vital the eyes are to the face.
I see. Is face mapping new? I know about projection mapping onto buildings.
You do see that a lot.
There were projects outside Japan that focused on face mapping as a theme, or that projected things onto faces in music videos and so on. But the general trend was to entertain. The idea was to shock and surprise people.
That's all?
It was fairly simple stuff. There wasn't much effort to bring a message or a strong concept to the work. But faces are so rich, they offer us so much potential. I thought I could make something really interesting.
When it comes to a message or theme, your work always seems to have a core connection with Japan. Is that deliberate?
I'm Japanese, so when I'm creating something, I think about what I can say to people from elsewhere in the world. What can I say about Japan? About the beauty of Japan? I think that appears unconsciously in my work. It's not really deliberate.
I see.
Next, let's examine facial design in Japan's traditional arts.
Both a smile and a frown, the subtle expression of this female no mask. No is a traditional Japanese art combining drama, dance, and music. Simple stage design and slow movements are used to retell myths and historical tales. Kyoto-based Mitsue Nakamura has been making no masks for 30 years. They're carved from cypress, which is easy to work and keeps its shape well. Tilted down, it takes on a melancholy, almost tearful air. A simple change of angle evokes totally opposite emotions. The key to these expressions is delicate carving around the eyes and mouth. A faint shadow between the eyes shows sorrow.
Hyoujou というのは眉間と口元ですから、そこの筋肉の微妙な動きでほとんど全ての表情を表現するものですから、非常に気を使います。そんなに激しく動いたり、あるいはあからさまにしないということが、その時代の品格であったわけで、非常に繊細なものは求めていると思いますし、そして能面もまたそれを表現しているものだと思うんです。
This mask, known as Jo, represents an old man. The lower eyelid is very slightly rounded. Tilted this way, the mask's gaze moves downward. Tilted up, he looks to the skies. Clever design evokes movement. Even Nakamura herself often makes new designs.
Yes, at the end. I wanted to do something Japanese, but I sort of uncovered that as I went along. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a natural part of myself as a Japanese creator being discovered within the work. If lots of people did the same thing, we would discover all kinds of new Japanese identities. Their work would reveal a sort of universality.
Fascinating connection.
No masks are based on Japanese faces from centuries ago. So why do they still speak to us so profoundly?
Their form is beautiful. The shape of the face, of course, but they also have a deeply rooted Japanese identity. They tap into a long history, and they also speak to our culture of communication through facial expression.
Something rather reserved.
The U.S. is known as a melting pot of cultures. I think a culture of gestures and strong facial expressions arose as a way to overcome language barriers. Japan is kind of the opposite. We have a common culture and lifestyle. We're very alike, so our communication is much more subtle. A quick glance is enough. That's what I think. Japanese are sometimes criticized for being inscrutable, but I think that's a sign of a long history of subtle communication. We didn't need to express too much to one another. No masks can express joy, anger, grief, and pleasure, but all of those are contained in an ambiguous expression and accessed through movement or shadow. I think there's something very universal about that which still resonates with us today.
Finally, let's look at facial design through the history of makeup.
To explore the modern history of makeup in Japan, we must examine social and cultural changes. Western cosmetics took off in the early 1900s. The trend was to ring the eyes with eyeshadow, add false lashes, and apply much wider lipstick than traditional Japanese makeup. After World War II, more and more women took to makeup as they joined the workforce, thereby mirroring social conditions. The late 1980s were the height of Japan's economic bubble. Booming national confidence was reflected in power makeup with thick eyebrows and bright lipstick. After the bubble burst, the trend turned to restrained, naturalistic looks. From the 90s onward, complex social dynamics were reflected in an immense diversification of makeup trends. Contemporary styles seem to come straight out of manga and anime. This is the creation of hair and makeup artist Noboru Tomisawa. He has worked on fashion collections, magazines, and promotional campaigns in Japan and abroad. Tomisawa's makeup reflects pop culture and the kawaii culture of Tokyo's Harajuku district. Why do people turn to these trends?
90年以降ですね、やはり日本人の、骨格とか特徴を生かした感じで、メイクアップ方法が変わっていったなというふうに思っています。日本人らしさ、日本人の、オリジナリティっていうのが逆にですね、海外の人からも真似されるような感じになってきたと思うんですね。
And Japan's makeup culture is now under a global spotlight. Tomisawa styles use fox masks, tengu, and other traditional motifs. Though they seem extreme for everyday use, there is an underlying ideal.
やはりですね、全部を作り込みすぎずですね、顔の一部をメイキャップしてるっていうことで、少しそういう出てくるその抜きがですね、非常に品につながるのかなっていうふうに思ってるんですけど。
The theme of his makeup creation at Milan Design Week 2015 was Edo and Harajuku. The inverted eye makeup reflects both the chaos and the discipline of modern Tokyo. As values change with each new era, Japanese makeup continues to adapt in a very public showcase of the face's expressive potential.
誰もがですね、やっぱないものねだりって言ったらあれですけども、やっぱりこうなりたいな、こうだったらいいなってと思うんですけど、やっぱりですね、僕ら日本人であることを逆らえないようなふうに思います。だからますますですね、もっと今後もっとオリジナリティなもの出てくるのかなって思いますけどね。
When I began modeling in Tokyo 10 years ago, makeup was all about creating depth and shadow. Everything was focused on that. Thick black eyeliner, double lashes. Now it's about highlighting the model's best features. If someone has great skin, the makeup will showcase that. It's all about looking natural.
Contemporary Japanese makeup does seem highly original, and I'm sure it's influencing other countries too. Any thoughts?
It's fascinating to review the history of Japanese makeup in this way. You can see how closely it mirrors the values of each era. That's true of faces too.
Interesting.
Your latest work is also focused on makeup, right?
That's right. It's entitled Kagami.
Kagami is based on the concept of a 3D mirror. The user's face is scanned to create a 3D map. Based on that data, 5,000 or so thin rods create a physical replica. Face mapping is used to project different.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to our podcast. Before we get started, I just want to say if you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes and give us a positive review if you feel so moved, and give us a 5-star rating if you think it deserves it. It really helps. It helps people find us. It helps people see the podcast and find it more easily and more quickly, and we would really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Now let's listen to our episode. Your mind. Like water. Water can flow. Point can flare. Welcome to the Bruce Lee Podcast, a podcast about Bruce Lee's life and philosophy. Hi everyone, this is Shannon Lee.
And this is Sharon Lee.
Welcome again to the Bruce Lee Podcast.
Welcome.
Hi everyone, today we are going to talk about a topic that a lot of people email in and ask about all the time, so we just thought we would devote some time to it, which is my father's routines around fitness and nutrition.
Now, we just want to say a little caveat at the beginning of this episode that this was one of Bruce Lee's main kind of ongoing obsessions in his life. So we are not going to cover everything in one episode.
No, and we're not going to break down good routines or write diet plans for people.
Yeah, some people want Bruce Lee's exercise routines and want to copy them and stuff, but
Yeah.
there are some of those. But this is just the first conversation on fitness and nutrition, and just starting off covering some big themes and some ideas, and we'll obviously have kind of follow-up episodes on this topic, but
Yeah.
this has been requested several times, so we just thought we'd start the conversation.
Yeah.
So, Shannon, let's talk about some ideas and areas that your dad found important and part of his kind of daily practice in keeping fit and healthy.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of different facets to that, and I should say that he was constantly experimenting on himself, on his own body, and seeing what worked for his body, what didn't work for his body, and he was a voracious reader and taker in of information. He was constantly wanting to learn, and so he was tweaking all the time with all these different things. But of course there was cardio, there was weight training, there was nutrition from diet to supplements, there was martial techniques, of course, even teaching as part of training as well. So there were many different facets to what he did.
And not just the physical practice, but meditation, reading of books. He was a voracious reader, and we have already covered this, is just the variety of different practices that went into your dad's own style of martial arts. Comes from boxing and fencing and kung fu and dancing. If we look at his list of books, you know, in this area, they're even more varied, right?
Yeah, so we have all of my father's books in our archive, and there are hundreds of books, way too many to name here, but I just, as a fun exercise in thinking about doing this episode, I pulled out some of the books just on fitness, and there are titles in there from every area, and I just thought it would be fun to name off some of the titles, especially since the books are kind of older, so some of the titles are kind of amusing. But he had books like Yoga for Health, The Miracle of Fasting, Cycling, Exercising in Bed, Lazometrics, The Lazy Man's Guide to Isometrics, Lab Notation, The System for Recording Movement, A Simple Guide to Trauma, Running for Life, Fun in the Water, The Mechanics of Sport, Big Arms, Kinetic Bandaging, The Outdoorsman's Fitness and Medical Guide, Trampolining and Tumbling, Sense Relaxation, Exercise Without Movement, The New Aerobics, Fabulous Forearms, Building a Mr. America Chest, Intro to Acupuncture, Developing That V-Man Taper, The Teaching of Stunts and Tumbling. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on.
And he was reading and journaling all the time, right?
All the time. In fact, it was not uncommon for him to be doing a number of things at once. A lot of times he would read while he was stretching, or he would have a boxing film on that he was analyzing. He'd have a book open, and he'd be throwing kicks, you know. So he was a man who was capable of taking in a lot of information and synthesizing a lot of information and using his time very efficiently.
Okay, so I have a question about what he was eating and what he was drinking and the supplements he was taking.
Yeah.
So I know that we've covered that he was constantly tweaking, he was always innovating, he was experimenting on himself, but what were some regular parts of the nutrition program for him?
Yeah, there were things that he was always looking into. My mom and dad had one of the very first commercial juicers that was available in the home, and so they would juice vegetables and fruits, and, you know, one of the big ones, commercial ones that you could, like, throw the whole thing in now, which many people have in their homes now, but back in the 60s was pretty revolutionary. So juicing was a part of the regimen. Protein shakes. They would go down to the nutrition store, try different protein powders. They would use raw eggs. They would use peanut butter to make protein shakes. And when I say they, I mean my mom. would make the protein shakes.
Yeah, she was the chef.
She was the chef. Yes, my father was sort of the director of all of it, but my father went through a phase where he would eat organ meats because of their high mineral contents, which my mom, much to her chagrin, had to prepare. She was always like, ew, when she was holding the livers and the kidneys and the hearts and all that sort of stuff. He had many supplements that he used. He would sometimes put supplements into his tea and drink that throughout the day. He would do everything from Eastern supplements like ginseng royal jelly, and then also vitamins and brewer's yeast and all of those types of things. And so he was constantly using himself as a living experiment and seeing what worked best for his body, what his body was able to take in and use. You know, he was expending an enormous amount of energy on a daily basis, so he didn't really have to, like, watch what he ate, so to speak. He took in a lot of calories every day, but he would eat more like 5 small meals throughout the day rather than 3 large ones or something like that. So he was constantly feeding his own personal furnace and expending that energy. And he was also, by the way, which doesn't have to do with nutrition, but has to do with the wellness of the body, a big proponent of getting plenty of sleep. Yeah, so he used to really try to get 8 hours of sleep a night. So there was a lot that he was doing. He didn't like to eat a lot of baked goods. He would eat carbs like pasta and rice in particular, but not baked goods because he felt like the calories were really empty and that there just wasn't a lot of useful nutrition for him in that.
But he also ate normal food that he really enjoyed, like Chinese food, and you said your mom learned to cook some Chinese dishes.
Yes, and he loved my mom's spaghetti, and he would treat himself sometimes. He actually liked to have the occasional root beer. He really liked root beer. So he didn't deprive himself. He didn't look at it that way. I mean, he was a man who believed in living life to the fullest, and so he cared monumentally about his body and making sure that it was at its utmost of performance, but at the same time he enjoyed life.
And even though he enjoyed certain foods, he did not drink coffee or drink alcohol, right?
No, he didn't smoke, and he didn't drink alcohol, and he didn't drink coffee. You know, this is long before there were any of these tests about how bad smoking is for you. I just think in his mind he was like, this can't be good for me.
And by the way, all Asian men smoke, too.
Yes,
yes. So it's pretty unusual for your dad to not smoke.
It is, and drinking is a big part of the culture. Too, for sure. So alcohol didn't agree with him, didn't agree with his body, and he also just didn't like it. He just didn't like the taste of it, so bonus there.
And because he was such an individual, he didn't feel pressured from the establishment to... Because there's a lot of drinking in Asian culture, especially men and work, it's like you're just forced to drink and you can't not do it, otherwise you're insulting people and stuff.
Right. You know, and it's not that he had any sort of like, oh, alcohol is bad for you, no one should ever drink alcohol. It was for him. He didn't like it, it didn't make him feel good in his body, and so he didn't do it.
So he was training for function, not form. What does that mean?
So I know we've talked already on the podcast about the fight that my father had in Oakland with the San Francisco Chinatown community, which he won. He was challenged to a fight over him being this nonconformist upstart, and also the fact that he taught people from all walks of life and all ethnicities. And he won that fight, but in 3 minutes, I might add. But what came out of that for him was that he thought the fight had gone on too long. We know that this is sort of the genesis of him really seriously beginning to create his own style and break away from traditional martial arts. But it was also the beginning of him really looking at fitness and nutrition, because he realized, oh gosh, I had to run a lot in this fight. I was winded. A lot of martial arts is focused on the procurement of technique
and form,
but not the overall wellness of the body, and not the preparation of the body for the implementation of those techniques. So he started looking into weightlifting. He had a good friend who was a weightlifter by the name of Alan Joe, who started showing him how to do weightlifting routines and all of that. And what he started to realize was that he was getting bulky, and that was slowing him down. So then he was like, okay, I gotta switch this up, because I am trying to create a particular function for my body. So how do I incorporate some form of weight training? Because I can feel that it's good for my muscles, it's making my muscles strong, but how do I do it in a way that also keeps me fast and nimble and agile and light? So when we talk about training for function over form, he wasn't looking for a particular look that he wanted a way that he wanted his body to look so much as a way he wanted his body to function, because he was a martial artist and he had certain functions that were important to him. So there were many things that he tried, and he did do weight training, but he experimented with things like isometrics, which is a type of weight training where you burn to failure really quickly on a muscle, and he would do like lower weights, higher reps. He would do circuit training. He would also create exercises that were very focused on speed, being able to increase his speed, and not just the speed of his body, but even his perceptual speed.
What do you mean?
Being able to see and react to something quickly.
Oh, okay.
So like see something out of the corner of your eye. He would set up all these crazy exercises where he would put things in the periphery of his vision and then try to respond to them quickly. So he was, the guy was into it.
And also he was being very creative in this space.
Yes.
There are modified exercise equipment. He obviously designed new equipment that wasn't available and had his friends make it for him. And so because he was kind of geeking out on this whole space, whatever wasn't there and available to him, he just had to make, right?
That's right. He was a total fitness nerd. Yeah, no, he did. He created his own exercise equipment. He had a couple friends who were metal workers and who he would send sketches to or talk on the phone with and say, I'm really trying to create something that increases my forearm strength, so can you make this grip machine for me? Can you create, I'm really wanting to toughen my knuckles, the knuckles of my hand, so can you create these bags that are filled with different materials that I can punch that will help me to toughen my knuckles? And he was very focused on the very specific parts of his body, again, for the function of what he was looking for. So he did specific exercises to increase the strength of his neck, because he felt that a person who had a strong neck was not as easily knocked out. He would work on punching power. His forearms, by the way, were gigantic. I don't know if anybody has looked closely, but next time you're looking at pictures of my dad, look at his forearms. He has like Popeye forearms. It's kind of crazy.
But he was going for that.
He was going for that because it increased his punching power. Mm-hmm. So it was very specific. And of course he had abs for days. Core strength was really important to him, and he did abs just about every day. And the thing that's great is that when you look through his day timers, he's making notations on all of these things. You'll look and it'll say, October 13th, punched 1,000 times with my right hand, punched 1,000 times with my left hand, ran 7 miles, cycled for this long, skipped rope for this long, kicked this many times, so he was into it for sure.
Yeah, and it kind of varies when I see those day timer entries. Sometimes it says total exercise time 2.5 hours, and then other times it's much less, and sometimes more, so it seemed like he didn't have the same thing he did all the time.
Yeah, he would mix it up, and he was also a person, there's a crazy story about, he was going somewhere to an office building with a friend, and they got there and they pushed the button for the elevator, and they were waiting for the elevator to come, and he dropped down on the ground and started doing push-ups. And his friend was like, what are you doing? He was like, well, I'm not just going to stand here. He was that guy.
Yeah, making us all feel bad.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. And there are many writings where he says stuff like, if you have the option to take the stairs, take the stairs. If you have, all that kind of stuff. Because it was extremely important to him. And I want to emphasize, too, that beyond this, he had such a deep understanding of the physical form and the body. And he had books also on things like biomechanics, physiology, Newton's laws of physics and motion. Like, he was going at it at a very deep level.
One of the other areas of this topic that I want to cover is, I mean, I think we've all kind of culturally gotten the memo that meditation is important, but it's still very separate. It's a separate practice for most people than fitness and working out, right? It's kind of like I'm working out and then I go meditate and then, you know,
right.
I'm doing other things, and they're kind of segmented. I wanted to have you read what he wrote about exercise and jogging in particular, and that it seemed like the meditation was in the exercise, like it was all kind of part of the experience.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good thing. Like when we talked before about his ability to do more than one thing at once, he would use jogging that way as a form of meditation. He would say, jogging is not only a form of exercise to me, it is also a form of relaxation. It's my own hour every morning when I can be alone with my thoughts. And I think he really considered meditation as a way to, and I don't want to say this because I don't want to confuse people, because meditation is not about a busy mind, but it was a way of being with himself and exercising his awareness, I want to say. It was a way of freeing up his mind, which was in itself a practice of health and well-being.
Yeah, well, he says meditation is a freeing of the mind from all motives, so it's kind of being with your mind without agenda, and I guess without ego is this kind of, you know, kind of your mind likes to create plans and like how you're going to get ahead or how you're going to achieve more or want more. It's kind of in an acquisition frenzy, right? But to be with your mind free from all motives is a very specific practice.
Very specific, because he says, you know, where there's a motive, there's a way, a method, a system, a discipline, something that we are striving towards, right? The motive is brought about by the desire for an end or for a goal or to achieve something. And so when I meditate, I'm freeing myself from all that. I'm letting it go. And I'm sort of being in my natural state. I'm sort of tapping into my natural reservoir of who I am.
And I imagine it's much less busy than the monkey mind because it's not conniving or making plans or trying to get something.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, I've had a love-hate relationship with jogging over my life. I used to really hate jogging, and then I got to a place where I actually really started to enjoy it, and it was because of that. When I jog, and, you know, not that there's anything wrong with listening to music, but I don't listen to music. I just get into a rhythm, and I just let my mind sort of wander while I'm running along, and it's really not boring. And there's an interesting thing that happens is that when you settle into that sort of meditative state when you're jogging, time gets really fluid, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've gone pretty far, and I wasn't striving or like suffering through it in some way.
Also, when he was jogging was not a mainstream activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was doing these kind of leading edge, like you said, experimental fitness routines, and the latest trends, he was kind of voraciously picking up on them and then kind of using them in his practice.
Yeah, and he really loved to jog, especially like early in the morning when we were living in Hong Kong. He used to get up early in the morning and go for a jog because nobody would be out. And Hong Kong is such a crowded place, and it was really hard for him to be alone outside in Hong Kong, especially once he was doing the movies and becoming famous. Jogging was early in the morning in Hong Kong was really a way for him to like be outside, be quiet, be in a more peaceful space where there weren't a lot of people, but be able to be outdoors, and it was really a nice practice for him.
I also like your dad's super practical advice on eating. I read this and I thought, oh, well, of course, but easier said than done, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he said, eat what your body requires and don't get carried away with foods that don't benefit you.
Okay, so there's that. Everybody just follow.
So there's that. But what I want to point out in that phrase is he says, don't get carried away. So he's not saying, like, never eat anything that's not 100% good for you. He's just saying, don't get carried away with it.
Yeah.
Your body needs nutrition. You know, in fact, food is medicine for the body, right? Like, it has all the things your body needs to function. It has the hydration, it has the minerals, the vitamins, the protein, the fats, the things that your body needs as a functioning system. So eat the food that your body requires. And, you know, it's okay to have root beer every once in a while, just don't get carried away.
Well, it's also a very relaxed stance, which sometimes when we're thinking about fitness and nutrition, that it does have to be really rigid and disciplined. But even where people say, well, I eat like this 6 days out of the week and I allow myself one cheat day or something like that, where you just go hog wild and eat every horrible thing.
I'm going to have a dozen donuts.
Yeah, and they feel really sick because they're going overboard. But that's also so regimented and so extreme and so charged. It's like you're restricting 6 days out of the week so that you can be a glutton that seventh day, and it's just all kind of a little out of whack. But I like that. Enjoy stuff, but if it starts feeling like it's getting out of control, then like that, you don't want to veer into that direction.
I love what he says here, where he says health is an appropriate balance of the coordination of all of what we are.
Yeah, so then it's a concert of all these things. I think part of when people email us or ask us questions about what was Bruce Lee's fitness and health routine, I think somewhere embedded in that question is, I want to look like that dude with the bat wing, muscles, and so how do I get there?
Yeah.
But really, if you look at, again, kind of the whole practice, it's a commitment to this kind of leaning forward, experimenting, trying. Obviously, he had genuine passion for the topic, and then making sure that he's in harmony with his body whenever he's trying all of these things: nutrition, meditation, variety, stimulating the mind as much as the body, even in the practice of physical fitness. Having a loving wife who is willing to juice things for you and make and all of this
touch organ meats. Organ meats, let's be clear about that. But it also is in line with the philosophy of self-actualization. Health is, right? Because your body is one of the things that belongs to you, and one of the things that you can listen to, get clues from, cultivate, and balance, just like your psyche, just like your passion or life purpose. Your body is the vehicle through which you move through the world. So
yeah, I mean, your body is the embodiment of this energy and the philosophy, right? It's a very sane and measured way of looking at your body that's real, and not from pure aesthetics or just any kind of outsider's view on what society thinks you should look like. And also, at the time that your dad was cultivating this look that he's famous for, the kind of ripped abs and the cut look, it wasn't the popular physical look of the time.
No.
It's what we're used to now. But at the time, if you look at what the culture thought was a healthy, fit body, it was a very kind of all-American, field and stream, football player, a big guy, muscular but not cut, and not fast.
Right, and when you look at the pictures of him when he first started getting into weightlifting, that's what his body was starting to look like. It was getting kind of bulky. I mean, listen, the guy was never not in shape. Right. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
But he was starting to cultivate this ideal of what shape meant at the time, in that time period, which was a little bit of a bulkier, stockier build. And the people who were extremists into fitness and all of this were bodybuilders.
Right.
Who had these gigantic,
A Muscle Beach, right?
Muscle Beach, pumping iron, all that kind of stuff, which is one look. But what he was doing was not what everybody else was doing.
Well, I think also going back to function over form is that he was going for speed and agility and, a different kind of moving his body through the world. And he cannot move in the way that martial arts demands with a giant, bulky, muscled figure that's really meant for posing on the beach and maybe carrying like a girl like on your shoulder and looking beautiful in its own way, but certainly not for motion.
Right. It was, again, because that's what was part of his purpose and his self-cultivation.
So at the time he was cultivating a look that wasn't perceived in the culture as the ultimate healthy body or the ultimate aesthetically beautiful body. He was really deep in his own practice of how do I want my body to move and how should it perform. And then what happened was he created this new look. I mean, certainly, especially for an Asian man, in the culture, nobody looked like that. Nobody had seen a body like that before and certainly moved that way.
There are many cut people today, and you see that striation of muscle in people now, but even still, his body was so unique. I mean, nobody has a body just like he had. I mean, he cultivated it in such a way with the giant forearms and the big bat wings and the way he could roll his shoulders and all of that. It was really a phenomenal thing and very particular to him.
Right, in particular to how he wanted to move and be powerful. I guess this also just made me think, well, he must have looked peculiar to some people at the time of what he was shaping himself to look like, and that he wasn't really paying any kind of attention to anybody from the outside telling him how he should look, what he should look like, what physical fitness looks like. So therefore he wasn't trying to mimic or imitate anything either. And so I think for all of us that's really great information to have in our cultivating our own practice, whatever it is that you can customize your body based on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, actually I think some of his students thought that he was a complete weirdo, because I remember them telling me stories about how they'd come over to the house and he would be like, look, come over here, I want to show you something. What? And he'd pull up his sweatpants and expose his thigh and be like, watch this, and he'd be flex and this one little muscle would pop out. He's like, look at, I've been isolating this muscle, I can pop this one muscle out and it's really helping me with this. And they were all like, yeah, okay.
He's very excited.
Way to go, Bruce.
Well, I mean, it shows his passion and his obsessiveness about it, but also the detail level that he was working in. Yeah. It wasn't about, look this way, but, this function I've discovered about my body.
Yeah, no, he was very in touch with his body and the entire mechanics of it, from digestion to musculoskeletal and all of that. I do want to mention, too, that my father was also big into stretching, because we didn't mention that before, and I think it's something, this made me feel really good, personally, because he's so limber and he can do these high kicks and all this sort of stuff, and I was lamenting one time, I'm like, I'm so, to Ted Wong, my Sifu, who was a student of my father's, I'm like, I'm so not flexible. I wish I was naturally flexible like my father. And Ted was like, oh no, your father was not naturally flexible. Your father had to work really hard at it, because he couldn't just naturally easily bend over and touch his toes and do the splits, or when you squat down, he couldn't get his heels to touch the ground. He was tight in his body, which is probably in part why he was also fast. But he understood that flexibility was a huge key to what he needed to be able to do, and the health of all of these martial movements that he was executing all the time was to practice at flexibility as well. So stretching was a huge part of his routine too. You know, I think the thing to encapsulate this whole discussion with is that even though we're talking about fitness and nutrition, we're really talking about overall health and well-being, and that includes not just the body, but the mind and the spirit, right? You always hear mind, body, spirit. But we've talked about how he worked on his body in a way that was very specific to him and his own process and his own self-cultivation, and that it was a big part of health. Now, he was obviously in a lane, right, of martial arts and fitness that many of us are not in to that degree. However, he had lots of things to say just about...
Afraid to get married at this point. You know, look at Kobe. Look at the shit he's going through right now. Right? The guy's getting a divorce. His wife's going to get $70 million. Never hit a layup in her life. You know, can anybody explain these divorce settlements? Can anybody make sense of these fucking things? Tiger Woods' wife, $250 million. She's a babysitter worth $250 million fucking dollars. Somebody, go ahead. Somebody, explain, justify it. Justify it. What, he cheated on her? I don't give a fuck. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. He cheated on her. Great, the relationship's over right then. Kobe cheated, right? Shouldn't that relationship been over right then? Why did she hang around like some jaded cop for 3 years trying to get her fucking pension, right? Get that 10 years in? I don't know, maybe that's too harsh. That shit bothers me, man. Dude, there is an epidemic of gold-digging whores in this country. And every night I put on the news, and I'm waiting for someone to address it. Every night, never see it, you know? And every night I bring up gold-digging whores, and the whole crowd pulls back like I'm up here talking about Bigfoot, right? Like I'm saying the moon's made out of cheese or something. Talking about whores, people. They're everywhere. How many? How many more great men are going to get chopped in half before we do something? Why is it so quiet in here? God damn, I don't get it. What is it? Is it women? Do you think I'm calling you? I'm not calling any woman here a whore, okay? So don't pull back. That's not fair, okay? If you brought up wife beaters, I wouldn't like pull back. I get it. There's guys hitting women, they need to be stopped. We gotta understand that gold-digging whores are the wife beaters for men. Yeah, they are. Except we don't have that Rihanna lumped up photo in the end, so it's not obvious. It's in the eyes. It's in the lines in your face. It's in Mel Gibson's high-pitched voice on the answering machine. I had to give up my Laker tickets, right? That is the sound of a man being taken for everything he's got. I gotta tell you, I'm envious of women, okay? I'm not saying your problems get solved, but at least they're taken seriously. You know? People, you got 1-800 numbers, you got ribbons, there's groups. People give a shit. Anything happens to a guy, it's just considered funny. Some woman cut her husband's dick off, threw it in the garbage disposal, and turned it on. People thought it was hilarious. They were, hey, Stumpy, nobody cares. Why would you do that? Why would you accomplish all that and then fuck it up, hooking up with one of the ugliest human beings I've ever seen in my life? I'm not saying I'm a prize, I'm just saying, you know? It's got to be something beyond that, right? You know what I think it is? I think it comes down to the way he talks, you know? That dude should be unloading trucks in Transylvania. That should have been the height of his success. But because he's a great man, he had the balls to move to America. Became famous for lifting weights. I lift weights, nobody gives a shit. He lifts weights, becomes super famous. Did he rest on his laurels? No. Next challenge. I'm going to become an actor despite the fact that nobody can really understand me. Against all odds, he starts making movies. Get down, there's a bomb, get out of there. Becomes one of the biggest blockbuster stars of all time. What are you gonna do next, Arnie? I think I'll marry a Kennedy. There's no fucking way you can do that. Bam, he does it. Cherry on top, I'm running for governor of a state I can't even pronounce, and he wins the election. Why wouldn't this guy think he couldn't bang his maid in his own bed and get away with it? This dude has been in the zone for over 4 decades. 4 decades, nothing but neck. Bang a maid in my own bed? Dude, that's a layup. Are you serious? I had a hit movie with a midget. I don't even need a condom. Right? And then what happens? The smoke clears. Then all these trolls come out of the woodwork and start judging this great man. All these fatties, these fucking old guys who never got any with their jowls, coming on TV, absolutely reprehensible behavior. What kind of a public servant? His legacy is shrouded. Like they have any idea what it's like to be tempted at that level, right? Like they have groupies as they waddle out to their Mercury Tracer, parked on the other side of a dumpster. Really? You're beating them off? This guy, he's not a great man anymore? Terminator doesn't count? Is that what the fuck you're telling me? Because he fucked Alice? Really? He's still not a great man because he did that. Then that's the whole thing's over? Anybody here think they could move to Austria, learn the language, become famous for working out, then be a movie star, then marry into their royalty and hold public office? How many lifetimes would you need? I'm on my 3rd attempt at Rosetta Stone Spanish. Right? How can I judge these guys? I can barely handle the temptations of Facebook. I'm going to judge Tiger Woods? I golf. I don't walk off the 18th hole and there's a busload of Scandinavian women waiting to fuck my brains out. Sorry, ladies, gotta go home to the wife, right? No, it kills me. And there's no help out there for guys. There isn't. There's nothing out there to help you handle becoming rich and famous. There's nothing to prepare you for that platoon of whores that's gonna form on the horizon, right? Like Braveheart, faces painted, skirts on, will run down the hill, they'll jump on your dick in front of your wife. They don't give a shit. It's not even a handbook out there. I saw one article written about it on the cover of Time magazine. It said, why do so many rich, famous, and powerful men act like absolute pigs, right? And the article was actually written by a woman. That's like me writing a book, The Third Trimester, and What to Expect. Ladies, you're gonna feel a pressure. How the hell would I know? You don't want to hear that from me, right? Then why is this woman telling me what it's like to have a dick? That makes no sense. You have no idea what it's like to have a dick. 24/7. Do it. Fuck it, do it. That's what it's saying. Do it. Yeah, do it. That's how we survived as a species. Every man in here is programmed to fuck 85% of the women in this room. Right? Yeah, we are. Do it, fuck it, do it, you know? It's just that you won't. That's the only reason why we don't, you know? That's not you keeping your dick in check, you know? Some guy at Home Depot working there, he wants to fuck just as many women as a celebrity, right? But he can't do it because whores don't care about lumber, right? But the second he hits the fucking lottery, all of a sudden, you know, that do it, fuck it, do it, you know? That wasn't affecting his life. Then all of a sudden these whores show up. I'll do it, I'll suck it, I'll do it, right? No, somebody's got to step up, all right? I'm not even blaming whores, really. Just guys, we're fucking idiots. What are we doing? Why are we working so hard and then giving it all away to some chick who did 3 shifts at a fucking Hooters, you know? They're fucking bums. Sitting there with fucking Dorito dust in their cleavage, walking around with hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm sick of that shit. That's what the law says. 100 years ago, I could beat you with a fucking mop handle. I'd be like, oh, that's what the law says. Doesn't make us right. No, it's unreal. And all this shit's going down, and we're not doing anything. What are we doing? Same old shit. Sitting around watching Shark Week, right? Watching shit about poisonous snakes half a world away, just filling your head up with all this useless information. What to do if you come face to face with a Bengal tiger? Don't look at it, don't look away. Slowly back up as you push your friend forward, right? All this useless information, yet hanging between your legs is this thing that could crumble your entire empire 7 minutes or less. Don't know a fucking thing about it. Even worse, you think it's your friend. Yeah, you know why? Because your dick's like a dreamer. You know, your dick believes. It's like a motivational speaker. I don't give a shit what question you ask it. It's always like, yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Exit strategy. Later. We'll be fine. Where's your dick when you get caught, right? Then it's just slumped over like, hey, I thought it was a good idea. Yeah. You have to know that. Dude, if your dick was the third base coach, it wouldn't hold anybody up. It'd just be fucking waving people around. Everybody, go in standing up. You got it. Oh, shit, here she comes. Slide. All right, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much for coming out. I hope you had as good a time as I did. Thank you. One time she was watching this show, it was like a poor excuse for The View, and they started talking about domestic violence, right? For the 9 millionth time this year, they're talking about domestic violence, just in case, you didn't get the memo, Evidently, just some people didn't get it. It's not okay to slam your wife's head into the cupboard drawers because she didn't dry the can opener off properly, It's gonna fucking rust, right? How do you not know not to do that shit? Do they really have to keep talking about it? It's like wife beaters watching for, oh, fuck, now I get it. Upset daisy, sweetheart, here we go. There you go, oh. So at the end of the hour, they come to the logical conclusion. They're like, there is no reason to hit a woman. There is no reason to hit a woman. And I was just like, really? I could give you like 17 right off the top of my head. You could wake me from a drunken stupor, I could still give you like 9. Dude, there's plenty of reasons to hit a woman. You just don't do it. But to sit there and suggest that there's no reason. Dude, the level of ego behind that statement. What are you, levitating above the rest of us? You're never annoying? Women, how many times have you thought about slapping your fucking guy in the head this week? There you go. Every day. You didn't do it, right? Oh, dude, it drives me nuts. There's no reason. There's no reason. Really? No reason? How about this? You marry a girl, you fall in love, you buy her a house. You go to work every day paying off the house. You come home one day, she's banging the next door neighbor, hands you divorce papers. You got to move out, sleep on a futon, and still pay for that house that she's going to stay in. No reason. I'm not saying you should do it, but there's plenty of fucking reasons in that arc of a story. No, that's the thing. Really is, that's the thing. I hate that saying there's no reason. Obviously, I'm not saying to hit a woman, but saying there's no reason, I think that's crazy. When you say there's no reason, that kills any sort of examination as to how two people ended up at that place. If you say there's no reason, you cut out the build-up, you're just left with the act. How are you going to solve it if you don't figure it out? Look how awkward it is in here right now. I said you shouldn't hit a woman. I'm just saying, how come you can't ask questions? You can only ask questions about what the guy did. You can never ask about the woman. Why is that? Why is that? What is that? What does answer him right mean? What does that mean? Are you the idiot who got up halfway through the special during the bit and you're like walking around like I'm not fucking taping a special here? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Fucking had to ignore all of that and now you're gonna like yell out? And not only that, yell something that makes no fucking sense whatsoever? Answer him! Answer him! Every fucking special I do, there's always one. Always, right down the fucking middle. Talking about hitting women, sweetheart. And I think you just added another reason. Jesus fucking Christ. Love this. I'm not even in a relationship with her, and she's fucking nagging me. It's fucking unbelievable. Look, I understand hitting a woman's a bad thing, okay? How come you can't fucking ask questions? I just don't understand. Like, if I get bit by a rattlesnake, wouldn't you guys have some questions? Right? How did it happen? Did you not see it? Were you fucking with it? How did this snake get so mad it almost killed you? Firemen put out a fire, they don't just drive away afterwards, they sift through the debris. How did it start? Here's an oily rag, right? Look, I realize I'm coming off pretty ignorant right about now. I realize that. Let me extend an olive branch then, okay? I realize that there's some animal guys out there, okay? Horrible guys, you know, have a rough day at the factory, come home, tuna casserole, and just start swinging, all right? I'm not trying to say that those people don't exist. I realize they exist. They should be buried underneath the prison, okay? So if I can admit that, ladies, can you at least admit that every ass-kicking doesn't just fall out of the fucking sky? Really? Even hockey has 2 minutes for instigating, right? They understand that some back and forth happened before that shit, you know? You know what it is every case is handled like that Rihanna one, where they just say, the guy's a piece of shit, fuck this guy, blah, 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 send him to jail, and then they never ask anything about that. You know, I'm not saying he should have done it, but I'm just saying. Just saying. Dude, in your heart of hearts, what do you think was going down before that happened? You think she was just sitting there going, oh my God, Baskin Robbins, you want to get some ice cream? You know? Or do you think maybe they were having some epic end of the relationship fight and some crazy shit was being said? Maybe she was screaming in his ear some crazy female shit like, oh, fuck all your friends, I don't give a fuck. Maybe that's why I sell more albums than you, motherfucker. Right? To be fair, she could have just been sitting there going, I need a tissue. Do you keep those in the glove box? Oh my God, I'll bring my out. I'll bring my out. No, fuck that, because you know what it is? They never address how women argue, which I think is the core of a lot of that shit. You know, and I gotta tell you something, man. Like, I never knew how women argued, but after 20 years of losing every significant battle in a relationship, I finally figured out how they argued. I'm gonna tell you something. I'm starting to turn this franchise around. I have begun a winning tradition. This is how they argue, as far as I can tell. All right? If they're right, they argue the point. And they stay on point and make sure you stay on point until you're down on your knees, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. All right? No problem with that. Totally respect it. But here's the thing. If they're wrong, they go rogue. They go off-road. They start thinking of shit you're sensitive about. Maybe you don't get along with your dad. And in their head, they just start concocting this evil statement. Totally designed, this desperate Hail Mary attempt to make you so fucking mad, you just call them a cunt. That's what it is. And cunt trumps all the bullshit they did to start the argument. Now it's not about that. Well, that's no reason to call me a cunt. And then that's it. You're in this room now, right? And they won't hook up with you for a couple of days. Who cares? Who cares? You rub one out. Rub one out like a man. It's the champagne of victory. You know, like I dated this girl one time. She was like really into like women's issues. So we used to always have these dumbass arguments. So one time she came up to me, she goes, okay, explain this to me, Bill. Why does a guy make more an hour to do the exact same job, huh? I go, I'll tell you why. Because in the unlikely event that we're both on a Titanic and it starts to sink, for some fucked up reason, you get to leave with the kids and I have to stay. Yeah, that's why I get the $1 more an hour. Well, think about it. If there's a house fire, it's always women and children first. I got to stand there with like the back of my shirt on fire going, let's go, people,